Notre Dame wants the USC rivalry to live forever, but Lincoln Riley and the Trojans are thinking about walking away. But why? Plus, Marcus Freeman is now a top 5 coach in college football, according to ESPN, leaping past Lincoln Riley and a whole lot of other big names. We're talking about all that and more on today's Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome into another edition of Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a producer at Fox Sports and have been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. Today is Tuesday, May 20th, and thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Please remember, hit that subscribe button on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform if you have not already. I'd really appreciate it, especially for those of you watching along on YouTube, because we are very close to that 10,000 subscriber number. So please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, let's get into it because we have a lot to talk about on today's show. We're going to cover a whole lot of topics. We're going to start with a historic rivalry to Marcus Freeman's status among the elite coaches in college football. And we're going to finish off with some lacrosse talk at the very end. We're going to start off by diving into the latest report from Pat Forde of Sports Illustrated, who questions the future of the iconic Notre Dame-USC rivalry, and I'll break down what's really happening behind the scenes there. Then we're going to move to the annual top coaches list from ESPN, where Marcus Freeman is ranked as the 4th best coach in college football. And finally, we'll wrap things up with some thoughts on Notre Dame men's lacrosse as they just suffered a heartbreaking loss to Penn State that ended their hopes for a three-peat. But let's start with the latest on the Notre Dame-USC rivalry. And if you've been following this story, you know that it's really ramped up in the past week, but it honestly dates back to the day that USC decided that they were going to leave the Pac-12 and go to the Big Ten with UCLA. And I just want to make this point very clear. If, because nothing is set in stone yet, if the Notre Dame-USC rivalry ends, it will be solely because of USC, and it would be a massive loss for college football. As I was saying, there have been rumors going around for over a year now, but it's really ramped up in the past week. I would say last week it was more internet rumors going around. It felt like there was a lot of smoke to this fire. I addressed it on last week's mailbag at the end, but now it's really ramped up. And Pat Forde of Sports Illustrated came out with a report on Monday that said the rivalry is on the brink. That's the quote he used, and it felt like it put a real mark on this rivalry because like Notre Dame fans kind of knew about it, USC fans knew about it, but now the rest of the college football world is kind of learning about the state of the rivalry, and it's not in great condition right now. And the Notre Dame-USC series is one of the most storied rivalries in all of college football. It dates back to 1924, and if you believe the urban legend, it actually has to do with Knute Rockne's wife, who convinced Coach Rockne to make the trek from South Bend to Southern California during the winter to get away from the South Bend winter. And look, as someone who endured 4 South Bend winters when I lived there for 4 years as a student, to someone who now lives in Southern California, Mrs. Rockne was onto something, okay? So that is apparently how the rivalry started, and these two teams have played every single year except during World War II and in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. This rivalry features 2 of the most successful programs in college football history. They're 2 teams ranked in the top 10, most wins all time, most national championships, most Heisman winners. It is such a great rivalry that represents everything we love about college football, except that it's a little bit unique in that it's an intersectional rivalry. Notre Dame obviously located in Indiana, USC in Southern California. They're not in the same conference, but that has never mattered before. And the current contract between these 2 teams ends after next season, this upcoming season, I should say. Notre Dame is scheduled to host USC on October 18th in South Bend, and at that point, that is the last game on the schedule. Now, USC did offer a 1-year extension to play in Los Angeles next season at the end of 2026, kind of like how it's been every single year. When USC comes to Notre Dame, they play in October. When Notre Dame goes to USC, it's the last game of the regular season, typically for Notre Dame. So now, why is it in jeopardy? Well, athletic director Pete Bavacqua made Notre Dame's stance crystal clear. He told Pat Forde in his column, quote, "I think Southern Cal and Notre Dame should play every year for as long as college football is played, and SC knows that's how we feel." end quote. Meanwhile, USC says that they are hesitant to commit to a long-term deal due to the uncertainty of the college football playoff format and increased travel demands as a Big Ten member. It's almost like USC joined a Midwestern conference and then were surprised when they realized they have to then travel to the Midwest more than once throughout the season. Like, yeah, you joined a Big Ten that has Maryland in the same conference. Why is Maryland in? Conference realignment. I don't think they're a great fit, but hey, USC is going to have to travel across the country to play Maryland. They're also going to have to travel to Piscataway to play Rutgers. They're going to have to travel to West Lafayette to play Purdue. They're going to have to travel to Bloomington to play Indiana, Columbus to play Ohio State, Ann Arbor to play Michigan. That is the reality of the situation. When you join the Big Ten, a decision that they willingly decided, they went out of their way to leave the West Coast Conference in the Pac-12 to join the Big Ten, and now they're shocked that they have to travel. And that appears to be a big problem for them. And according to the report, they have suggested moving the game to the season opener rather than its traditional midseason and end-of-season spot. So USC is at least presenting some options to keep it going. And I don't know if the reason why they want to play it at the beginning of the year is just because they have more travel at the back end with the Big Ten. I don't know. But that is apparently the latest, according to Pat Forde. But Notre Dame, meanwhile, despite the demands of balancing their schedule with all the conference realignment that's going on, they are taking on more big games. They have Alabama scheduled in a couple of years. They have Texas. They just signed a 12-year home-and-home series with Clemson. So their schedule is getting tougher. They're willing to travel all around the country. They have made it work as an independent for over 100 years. Travel has never been an issue, but yet for USC, this seems to be the biggest problem. And USC has been laying the breadcrumbs ever since they decided to join the Big Ten. Lincoln Riley even admitted this at Big Ten Media Days last season. He said, quote, "If you get in a position where you got to make a decision on what's best for USC to help us win a national championship versus keeping the Notre Dame rivalry, then you got to look at it," end quote. That was a real key moment in this when it was like, oh, USC is actually considering ending this rivalry. That quote is very telling. It shows that USC is putting its, quote, national title ambitions, playing an easier schedule ahead of preserving one of the most iconic rivalries in all of college football. The irony is that under Lincoln Riley, USC has been trending downward while Marcus Freeman's Notre Dame team is on the rise. They were hired during the same offseason. And I think if you ask most of the casual fans across college football who's going to be more successful at their job, Lincoln Riley at USC or Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, I bet a lot of people would have said Lincoln Riley. He had a great track record. What he did at Oklahoma was really impressive. They made it to the playoff a few times. They got throttled every time. Then again, so did Notre Dame under Brian Kelly. They also had a few Heisman winners, all thanks to Lincoln Riley. Great quarterback developer and all that. But USC is 25-14 under Lincoln Riley. Notre Dame is 33-10, and they just made it to the national championship game. Freeman is also 2-1 against Lincoln Riley head-to-head. Bigger question, why does Lincoln Riley have any say in the future of this rivalry? Because it lasted it's been going on well before Lincoln Riley became the head coach at USC, and it should last well beyond he's gone. And just so we're clear and so we're balanced here, Marcus Freeman shouldn't have any say in this rivalry either. It should be the athletic directors and the presidents who are looking out for the institution, the programs. These coaches can leave after any season, at any moment. So I don't think they should have a say, but apparently Lincoln Riley has a lot of say on the USC side. And this is the same coach who left Oklahoma right before they went to the SEC and is now trying to make their schedule easier now that they joined a tougher conference in the Big Ten. And it would just be a massive, massive mistake to let this rivalry end. Rivalries like USC and Notre Dame are foundational. It's college football's identity. It's not just about tradition. It's about national relevance, recruiting battles, and capturing the essence of the sport. On the field, it's a great rivalry. Off the field, especially this past offseason, has shown it's a great rivalry. They are constantly in recruiting battles despite the fact that they are located in two completely separate areas of the country. And even though there's a lot of different things going on between Notre Dame and USC, there are some similarities, as much as it pains me to say it. And I just feel like moving this game and making it like a thing where it's like a home and home every few years or cutting it entirely would damage the school's schedules and also would take away from one of the sport's annual spectacles. And I understand that these two teams have not played each other on a huge stage in a long time, but Notre Dame was going to cap off an 11-1 season, going up against a USC team that was incredibly disappointing this year. And that game was awesome. And Notre Dame won. They stamped their ticket to the college football playoff, and it was so much better because it was against USC. It was against their rival, and USC put up one hell of a fight. They didn't have anything to play for at that point in time because their season was over. The only thing that they could do was spoil their rival's season, and I can tell you from being there, their fans certainly relished that opportunity, and they were very close to doing it, but Notre Dame was able to get the win. And college football has already lost a part of its soul with the wave of conference realignment. We have seen so many great rivalries die and just so many traditions go to the wayside. And sacrificing this rivalry would only further disconnect fans from what makes this sport special. So if USC pulls the plug, it's a decision that's driven by short-sighted priorities that are inherently flawed, and it's not about what's best for the teams or college football in general. And look, some might argue that USC has a valid point in reconsidering their non-conference commitments and their Big Ten obligation because college football expansion may increase the importance of an easier schedule. We heard that argument after this past college football playoff rankings. Coaches were like, oh, well, now we're just going to schedule easier games. But this format is going to change. And there's probably going to be 4 automatic bids given out to the top 4 teams in the Big Ten. So strength of schedule is not going to be as important for those automatic bids because they will just have to finish in the top 4 in their conference schedule. And Notre Dame is a non-conference opponent, so it won't even impact USC. And other USC fans might blame Notre Dame's independence. I've seen that argument going around online. It's ridiculous because their independence was never an issue for over a century. It only became an issue after USC decided to join the Big Ten for more money. They knew it was going to force them to travel more. They knew they were going to have to face a harder schedule. But now their fans are trying to blame Notre Dame for the end of this rivalry when they are the ones making it very clear they want to play USC. The argument is flawed, and I think actually a lot of USC fans don't want to see this rivalry go away, and they blame Lincoln Riley for even putting it out there and suggesting that it should happen. So at the end of the day, Notre Dame is doing everything in its power to keep this rivalry alive, while USC's cowardice is putting it at risk. All right, maybe Lincoln Riley is just upset that Marcus Freeman has leapfrogged him among the top coaches in college football. According to ESPN, Freeman is already ranked as the 4th best coach in the sport after just 3 seasons at the helm. But is that ranking fair or foul? That's coming up next. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Jalen Brunson has been unstoppable this postseason, and you can back him up by betting on his over on points, rebounds, or assists. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. All right, here's my pick. We got Western Conference Finals starting up tonight. Timberwolves on the road against the Thunder. The Thunder just beat the Nuggets in Game 7. They destroyed the Nuggets. Meanwhile, Timberwolves have been waiting. They've had a pretty easy path up to this point, and they are plus 240 to win Game 1. So I'm taking the Timberwolves. I think that they're refreshed, ready to go, make a statement. Meanwhile, the Thunder are coming off a grueling series against the Nuggets, so I think the Timberwolves are going to steal Game 1. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Well, we are in the heart of the offseason. It's late May. There's not a whole lot of news going on. So we're going to talk about the Notre Dame-USC rivalry a lot more because that's the biggest story going on as it pertains to Notre Dame. There's a lot of talk about recruiting. But as someone who works in the industry, you know the best way to get through off-season content? Lists. That's why we do Top 5 Fridays on the show, because people love lists. They love rankings. They love debating it. It's great. I love it too. That's why I like talking about lists on the show. And today we're going to talk about ESPN's top coaches list because they ranked Marcus Freeman as the number 4 coach in all of college football. And I believe it's justified. It seems crazy to say. I would not have said he deserved to be anywhere near the top 10 before the start of 2024. But then you take a team to the national championship, 14-2 season, all-time great team at Notre Dame. And now I believe he is firmly in the top 5 in college football. He's with some high-profile names. Number 1 on that list is Kirby Smart. Number 2 is Ryan Day. Number 3 is Dabo Swinney. And then Marcus Freeman is right there at number 4. And then behind him, Steve Sarkisian, Dan Lanning, James Franklin, some big-time names, and I believe that ESPN got it right. I think it certainly sparks some debate, and it's a pretty volatile ranking because some voters had him as high as number 2, which I think that is a little bit overzealous, and then others left him off their top 10 entirely. They did a combined vote among all the writers at ESPN who talk about college football. Bruce Feldman from The Athletic, one of my favorite writers in the sport, really. He did his top 25 coach ranking. He had Marcus Freeman at number 6. So I think anywhere in that range from like 4 through 6 is a good place to be because I don't think he should be ahead of Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, or Dabo Swinney. What do all three of those guys have in common? They've all won at least one national championships. Kirby Smart has 2. Ryan Day just has his first one. Dabo Swinney has 2 as well. And despite the fact that there's sort of a mixed bag in terms of how people perceive him. Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? Or maybe even a little bit lower than that. I think it's just a testament to the job he has done so far in South Bend, and that's a big reason why so many people are so high on Marcus Freeman in the future of this Notre Dame football program, because in just 3 seasons, Freeman has turned Notre Dame into a legitimate national title contender. And I understand that he inherited a very good program. They went 11-1 the season before. And I actually object to the idea that he inherited some flawed system and that it was a lot of work he had to do to completely rebuild it. Don't get me wrong. He had to enhance it, and Brian Kelly didn't leave him a great quarterback situation, to say the least, in 2022. But Notre Dame had things rolling when Marcus Freeman got the job, but credit to him for taking that and then eventually elevating it despite a little rocky start in years 1 and 2. He just led the Irish to the College Football Playoff National Championship in just his 3rd season in what has been the most pivotal season for Notre Dame coaches going back decades, right? That's a big talking point last season. We talked about it a ton going into last season, how important year 3 is for a Notre Dame coach. It's probably going to tell you whether or not they're going to be a really good coach at Notre Dame or they're going to fail. And Marcus Freeman took his team to the national championship. So that should be a good indicator of what is to come for Notre Dame. But it's not just his on-field record. I think if you look at Notre Dame's roster, their overall depth of talent is better than it's been since the Lou Holtz era. That 2015 Notre Dame team was awesome. They had a bunch of NFL dudes on that team. Will Fuller, Jalen Smith, Ronnie Stanley, McGlinchey, ton of great future NFL players. Their top 22 was really good, but behind them, there was a big, big drop-off, and you started to see that as the season went on, and that team just kept dealing with more and more injuries. Well, in 2024, Notre Dame had a ton of injuries, but it just didn't seem to matter until the very, very end against Ohio State, because they would just plug guys in. Didn't matter if they were the 3rd-string Viper, like Junior Tuihalamaka. They were able to make plays in the biggest games, like that Sugar Bowl against Georgia, when it was Tuihalamaka who came in and he recovered a fumble that set up the go-ahead touchdown for Notre Dame when they were still kind of battling it out in the first half, and it gave Notre Dame a nice little cushion before Jaden Harrison ended up returning the kick for a touchdown to kick off the second half. It's guys like that who made plays, who helped get Notre Dame to the national championship, and that was not happening during the Brian Kelly era. And a big reason why is because of what Marcus Freeman has done, not just as a recruiter of high school prospects, but also finding guys in the transfer portal who are talented and are a good fit at Notre Dame, and then developing the guys on his roster. But to me, the biggest jump that Marcus Freeman has made from year 1 to today is his in-game adjustments. They were not very good. They were not a strong suit in his first year, and he made a lot of decisions his second year where I was like, what are you doing right there? They had a 9-4 record his first year with some bad losses to Marshall, Stanford. They went 10-3 in his second season with, the 10 wins is nice, but the dud against Clemson, the dud against Louisville certainly made you scratch your head. And then after that Northern Illinois loss at the beginning of last season, there were a lot of questions like, is Marcus Freeman the guy? I didn't say he wasn't the guy, but I did wonder aloud, hey man, how is this happening? Because Notre Dame had an extremely talented roster. They had just beaten Texas A&M, but credit to Marcus Freeman for not losing his team. As a matter of fact, getting his team to rally after that loss, and that led them to an improbable run that we're going to talk about forever, right? Last season was such a storybook season, and I think their ability to rebound after that loss to Northern Illinois is a big reason why. Hopefully, in the years to come, they don't need a loss like that to figure things out, but I do think that he deserves a lot of credit for making that happen. And then in terms of his in-game coaching, you think about some big games at the end of the season when he just kind of outsmarted Kirby Smart. When Notre Dame ran the punt team out in the field, then they took him off and they got Georgia to jump offsides. It was things like that. And then against Penn State, They just had things cooking. They were able to get the ball back, drive down the field, and get a field goal before the end of the first half. Like, there were just little things, little adjustments that he would make as the game's going on. He knew how to use his timeouts. And then I think that is a big reason why they were able to get to the national championship. And now he's in the same conversation as a Kirby Smart, who he just beat, Ryan Day, who has gotten the better of him 3 times as head coach, and Dabo Swinney, who those two guys have gone back and forth. All 3 of those guys have significant hardware. Smart had the back-to-back national titles. Day has Ohio State rolling right now, and even though it's been some time since Dabo Swinney was at the true mountaintop of college football, it looks like he's got Clemson back there up at the very top of the sport, and I feel like Freeman is not far off. He needs to win a national championship to be included with those guys. I think that is a prerequisite to be considered one of the best coaches in college football. You have to be the best at one season. That hasn't happened yet for Marcus Freeman, but he hasn't really been around that long of a time. And I think what separates him from some of the other coaches, like a Sarkisian, like a Lanning, like a James Franklin, obviously, the on-field success is one thing. He was able to make it to the national championship. Those guys were not able to. But I think his leadership is a big reason why. Like, his ability to galvanize the locker room is unmatched. Players really want to play for him. He has built a culture that resonates with recruits and players. Like, Notre Dame players aren't leaving in the transfer portal, to the point where I'm like shocked at how many guys came back, like the Notre Dame running back room. But I just think that people want to play for him. Coaches want to coach for him. That is how he has developed such a great staff. And even when you lose guys like a Deal McCullough, you're able to replace him with a Jaywan Sider. And I think the fact that he's been able to adapt to the modern age of college football is really, really impressive. He's not so dead set in his own ways that he's just going to keep the status quo. He's willing to change to figure out what is the best way to compete in the modern game. We've talked about his recruiting before. He has certainly elevated Notre Dame's recruiting operation, even though it hasn't translated to a top 5 class yet in the recruiting rankings. You look at the roster, you see what they have. Clearly, they are more talented now than they were before. And against top competition, his teams come to play. They are 14-5 against top 25 teams under Marcus Freeman. And in the 7 years prior to Marcus Freeman's time as head coach, they went 14-15. So it took Marcus Freeman 3 years to get to 14 wins against top 25. It took Brian Kelly 7 years in his last 7 years with the Fighting Irish. And I feel like there are some fair arguments against Marcus Freeman. Like, it's, maybe it is a little bit too soon to put him in the top 5 over someone like Kalen DeBoer, who has won every single place he's went. And even though his first season at Alabama was sort of up and down, they did hammer Georgia, even though they lost to Vanderbilt. But this is a guy who took Washington to a national championship. He won a ton of games at Fresno State. Like, he has literally won everywhere. He's been a head coach for much longer than Marcus Freeman. And even though Freeman has like the recency bias to make it to the national championship, DeBoer was there 1 year before, and they both had the same result. Now, granted, Marcus Freeman had to win a few more games to get there. The fact that they were both able to make it there says a lot about their coaching acumen. And I think that the first 2 years have to matter. The bad losses are bad. They're hiccups. Not just the losses to Marshall, Stanford, Northern Illinois, the 10 men on the field against Ohio State. Like, those are indefensible, but I feel like there isn't any one of these coaches who doesn't have some big-time blemishes on their resume. Like, if you want to compare Freeman to Dan Lanning, well, Dan Lanning hasn't made it nearly as far as Marcus Freeman. They had a terrible loss against Ohio State when it looked like they didn't even deserve to be on the same field as them, not to mention the losses to their arch rival Washington the year before when they had a chance to make the playoff. So he's got some tough losses, even though they're to like really bad teams. It's more so just losing on the bigger stage. And I feel like, if you look at the Freeman ranking, you might say, well, it's a little bit more about potential than the actual accomplishments. Maybe just because it's like one great season, but I don't know, man. Freeman has delivered a lot of great results. A national title appearance in your 3rd year is really, really impressive. 14 wins, including wins over Kirby Smart and James Franklin. Those are big-time achievements. So I think that Marcus Freeman absolutely belongs in the top 5 conversation. His trajectory is unmatched, and I think his ability to adapt and build on a strong culture has put Notre Dame back in national contention as a real contender, not like a team in 2012 who made it and then just got ran off the field. And I think if Notre Dame continues its upward trajectory, Freeman is going to win a national championship. And then if that happens, then you're talking about him being in the top 2, maybe top 3 in all of college football. So what Marcus Freeman is building at Notre Dame is serious, and I feel like if you asked 130 programs out there, would you trade your coach for Marcus Freeman? I would say the vast, vast, vast majority would say yes. All right, while Marcus Freeman is solidifying his place among college football's elite, Notre Dame men's lacrosse team was fighting for its own piece of history, but all good things must come to an end. Let's talk about the heartbreaking finish to their quest for a three-peat right after this. All right, I got a couple thoughts on the Notre Dame men's lacrosse team as we wrap things up here. And unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. The Notre Dame men's lacrosse team's incredible 3-year run came up short against Penn State, but I feel like the memories that were made during this era are unforgettable. Shout out to Coach Corrigan and the entire team, because even though they entered the season with hopes of achieving a historic three-peat, something that has not been done since Princeton won 3 straight from 96 through 98, it has just been a journey and a really fun one to watch from afar. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the biggest Notre Dame men's lacrosse fan in the world, but this time of year, I always enjoy following the team and their run. The past 2 years, those national championship games were a ton of fun as a viewer, and unfortunately, it wasn't able to happen this year. They actually built a 12-6 lead late in the third quarter against Penn State in the NCAA tournament quarterfinals, and it felt like they were on their way back to championship weekend, and then everything just completely changed. Penn State roared back. They scored 8 unanswered goals, and Matt Traynor scored 3 of his 6 goals during that run, and Notre Dame was shut out for the final 21 minutes of the game. Got to give credit to Penn State too, but Notre Dame just couldn't get any scoring opportunities. And this was the first time in 10 straight NCAA tournament games that Notre Dame experienced defeat. So for those players, I feel for them because it's been so long. I feel like, when I was in college and when I was watching the Notre Dame men's lacrosse team, they were always really good. And they had not won a national championship yet under Coach Corrigan. But now the fact that they won the last 2, that's just the expectation. And that's really hard to live up to. So you got to give some credit to Penn State. And I just feel like this team in this era of the Notre Dame lacrosse team deserves some shout out here, because even though this season didn't go how they wanted it to, it doesn't erase what this program has accomplished, because back-to-back national titles is just an unbelievable accomplishment. And then the 3-year run to get to this point, they did really good work at defending those titles. And yeah, they came up short, but now Notre Dame is considered a premier power in the sport. And as someone who didn't play lacrosse growing up and knows some people who did and kind of understands what the sport is from afar, I do understand that this Notre Dame program has kind of changed and revolutionized the popularity of college lacrosse. I think they brought in a lot of new fans, not just to the program, but to the sport as a whole. I would include myself in that, just as someone who enjoys watching the postseason at this time of year. And I feel like this team just redefined the expectations for Notre Dame lacrosse. They're no longer dreams to win a national championship. That's just the standard. And I think Penn State coach Jeff Tambroni put it best, quote, "They have set the standard over the last couple of years about what it means to be a champion." So even though the three-peat dream is over, the foundation that has been built is undeniable, and it's hard to imagine Notre Dame not being in the mix again next year. Once you establish back-to-back championships, all those young lacrosse prospects around the country are going to want to be a part of that, and they see how much fun this team has had, the legacy that the Kavanaugh brothers have at this place, and just all the great things that so many players have done, the great players to just continue to cycle through this program. I feel like they deserve some shine, even though it's coming after a loss. I remember talking about this team last year after they won the national championship, and it was fun. But I feel like now, even in defeat, they deserve a ton of recognition, because it's always tough to see a historic run come to an end. But for Notre Dame lacrosse, this is just another chapter in what's become a truly dominant era. And sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way and you have an off night and it just doesn't happen, right? Shots don't fall. But I feel like this legacy of this group is cemented and the program is still an elite company. This season may have ended, but this run won't be forgotten anytime soon. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I'm going to be back here tomorrow morning, Greg Famong from Irish Sports Daily, to talk more about the dire state of the Notre Dame-USC rivalry and his 2 Southern California residents who have to deal with obnoxious Trojan fans on a daily basis. This hits close to home, so you are not going to want to miss that. And if you enjoyed today's show, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching along on YouTube, also remember, drop a 5-star review if you're listening to the pod, because it really helps the show grow and reach more Notre Dame fans like you. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.